How dare you charge me to babysit?
r/EntitledParents. Our first story we'll be reading today. Entitled Mom shows up almost 4 hours late on a school night. Doesn't even pay me for the hours we agreed upon. From user Tersus Lay. After that, Entitled Mom tries to steal my birthday cake. Almost ruins my party. From user Xgalexiak. And after that,
Why aren't you watching your baby cousins? I don't care that they aren't your kids. Be more responsible.
from user Acceptable Dependent. And then we'll be finishing up with Entitled Stepmother hijacks my birthday again. From user Zoto Bird. Thank you so much to our authors for letting us read your stories. And if you're an author who would like to hear me read your story next, please submit them to the r/Mr. Reddit subreddit. And if you're new, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a thing. Entitled Mom shows up almost 4 hours late on a school night. Doesn't even pay me for the hours we agreed upon. So this is my first post on this subreddit, but it isn't my first entitled person story. Obligatory, not on mobile. English is my first language, and I don't really care about grammatical errors unless they're really bad, so I most likely won't edit. Some backstory. I've been babysitting since I was about 12 years old. I've been a summertime nanny before I got a job at the restaurant I work at now, and I love being around kids. Up until this point, I hadn't had to stop watching any particular child. Usually, I would cease my services when children got old enough to be left home alone. I was a junior in high school when this happened, and I knew the boys and Entitled Mom really well beforehand, or so I thought, so I had no issue watching the children. They were very sweet, polite, and well-behaved boys, and I never had any odd feelings towards the parents up until this point. So when the boy's mother asked me if I was free to babysit them, I was like, sure, why not? About 2 days before I went to babysit, I did all of my usual, first time working for this family things. Are there any allergies? From when to when will I be watching them? Are you comfortable with the pay rate we agreed upon still? Do any of them need medication? Everything was normal. The plan was I was going to be babysitting from 4 p.m. after school until 9 p.m. that evening. Feed the boys, get them in the PJs, make sure they use the bathroom before bed, and I would get paid when the parents got home from their dinner party. $5 per kid, 2 boys, per hour, for a total of $50 when they arrive. Keep that in mind. The night I'm supposed to babysit comes around. It's a fairly normal experience. The boys were, as they always were during church, well-behaved and respectful. They stayed out of trouble while I made dinner. They weren't fussy, went to bed after a story and a few lullabies. Everything was great. I then had 2 hours to do my homework. Great. Well, 8:30 rolls around, and the Entitled Mom texts me that they're going to be about 30 minutes late, as the party ended at 9 instead of 8:30. I'm like, that's fine. And I text my dad, and he says it's fine, so I go back to homework. Now, me having no concept of time, unless I'm really paying attention, I didn't notice when 9:30 passes and it hits 10:30. My dad calls, concerned because I'm not home yet. I'm concerned too, because Entitled Mom told me that she would be home only half an hour late, not an hour. So I tell him I'll check in. I text her and I get no reply. I try to call, and I end up having to leave a voicemail. I wasn't left a number for the father, whom I hadn't met at all before this because he often traveled for work, because his phone was broken at the time and he couldn't receive or send calls. So I was stuck there until the couple got back. I called my dad and let him know the situation, and he said that if she didn't get back to me by midnight to call the police. I thought that was a bit excessive, but nonetheless, I agreed. 11 o'clock. I text her again. No response. Call again. Rings until voicemail, and I leave another one, still trying to be polite, but add a bit of urgency, as it is a school night and my dad expects me home. 11:30 hits, and I text her again. This time, I get a response.
We're on our way now. Don't worry. We'll be there in 15 minutes.
So I'm relieved. I text my dad, and he just tells me that he'll wait up for me. I start packing up my stuff because I finished my homework. I check on the boys to make sure they're asleep, but one more time, and I'm prepared to go as soon as they walk in the door. 11:45, they don't show up. I'm a bit annoyed now, but I give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there was traffic. Midnight, still aren't there. I text her again, but this time I'm not polite at all. Entitled Mom, I need to go home. My dad is worried and wants me home. I have school tomorrow and a physics test. When will you be here? No response. I put my stuff by the front door and text my dad again. He's annoyed and tells me that if she doesn't show up by 1 a.m., then he's coming over to watch the boys so I can go home to bed. 12:30, I get a text.
We'll be home in just a few. We got hung up.
12:45, the couple gets home. I text my dad that they're home, and he says that he expects me home ASAP. Entitled Mom comes in with her husband, and neither of them look like they were in a rush. I was visibly annoyed, and the husband looked extremely confused by this. This is also the first time he has met me, and he thought I'd be older.
Thank you for watching the boys.
She hands me an envelope, and I look inside to see $40. I don't want to be rude, Entitled Mom, but you owe me more than this.
We agreed on 40, right?
No, 50. $5 per kid per hour. This is when the husband chimes in. Honey, we're really underpaying her then. He looked like he was doing the math in his head.
No, we agreed upon this, so this is what you're getting.
Now, I was stunned at this point. Up until now, Entitled Mom had never shown any signs of entitlement. After years of being around an alcoholic mother, I knew the difference between drunk and sober, and Entitled Mom was completely sober, so I was extremely confused. Honey, when did you tell her we'd be home?
1 a.m.
I can't hide my shock, but Entitled Mom is already shooting me out the door. I'm stunned as I'm pushed with my stuff into the driveway and given a swift goodnight. I look at the contents in the envelope, and I am extremely angry by this. I text my dad that I'm on my way home, and I start to get into my car to leave, until the husband comes out. How much do I owe you? Technically, almost 60, but it's fine. No, take this. He hands me 2 20s. I'm sorry about her. She told me she had had a sitter for the entire night. I thought you were a college student. That was unfair. Drive home safe. I'll pay you the rest this weekend at church. True to his word, he gave me the last 20 he owed me, as well as a bit of extra for the troubles. This happened 2 more times before I refused to watch their boys anymore. I still see the boys at church, and I love them to death, but I couldn't keep doing this as a high school student, and the boys thankfully understood. Edit. So this blew up way more than I expected. A lot of people are asking why I let it happen 2 more times. When babysitting, I have a 3-strike policy for both parents and children. For example, I no longer nanny for one family because the child would never listen to discipline and attacked me if I tried to. The other 2 times for this Entitled Mom were during the day, and the husband always paid me $20 extra after paying me what my rate was. They were very well-behaved kids, and they really liked me as a sitter. Each time I go to church, the boys always want to sit with me because they miss me. I almost threw out my 3-strike policy for these boys because I knew I would never have a more well-behaved duo. They never threw tantrums and never gave me a hard time about anything, so I kept them until I just felt I couldn't the 3rd time. Next we've got Entitled Mom tries to steal my birthday cake, almost ruins my party. Hey Mr. Reddit, longtime viewer here. Now, I've been a listener for a long time, and honestly never expected to have any experiences with entitled parents. That is, until a few days ago. It was my birthday, so to celebrate, I invited some friends over, and we partied in my backyard. Now, we're all teenagers, so it was no surprise that we were being extraordinarily loud. I guess our talking and laughing was what summoned Entitled Kid. As my friends and I are having a good time, I notice Entitled Kid looking at us from over the fence. He's just a little kid, no older than 7 or 8. He's been my neighbor for a really long time. I even remember the day his parents came home from the hospital. I held him as a newborn and everything. He and his family are usually very nice, so I'm still confused as to why they acted like this.
What are you doing?
I heard Entitled Kid call from the fence. It's a party for my birthday, I responded. He's a kid. He's curious. I didn't think anything until he spoke again.
Can I join?
I was planning on saying no right off the bat to him. I mean, we're a bunch of teenagers. A little kid shouldn't be hanging out with us. Plus, I honestly just didn't want him to be there. But my friends had all taken notice at that point, and, not wanting to look like a jerk, reluctantly agreed. Entitled Kid came running around the fence and joined in. My friends all humored him, as nice people do. I then noticed his mother, Entitled Mom, was now watching us from the same spot her son did. Probably to make sure he's all right, I figured. Everything was fairly normal until my mom brought out the cake. Fluffy and covered in bright colors, every little kid's dream. So everyone is singing happy birthday to me when all of a sudden, Entitled Kid pipes up.
Can I cut the cake?
My mom looked rather surprised at seeing Entitled Kid, and I don't blame her.
Entitled Kid, I think you're a bit young to cut it. Also, it's an ice cream cake, so it'd be hard to cut,
my mom explained. I thought that would be the end of it, but no.
But I want to cut it.
Entitled Kid was now stomping his foot and whining, the start of a full-blown temper tantrum. My friends and I looked at each other, unsure of what to do, when I heard the voice of Entitled Mom, who had been watching the situation this whole time.
Just let him cut it. It's no big deal,
she said. I almost thought I didn't hear right. This mother was going to let her very young son, who was still throwing a fit, I may add, cut a very frozen cake? And she wasn't suggesting he do it with an adult. She thought letting him do this alone was a perfectly acceptable concept.
It's fine. I'll just cut it,
my mom insisted, clearly trying to defuse the situation. Entitled Mom immediately perked up at the aspect of someone telling her child no. I was distracted as my mom brought the cake into the house, and I didn't see Entitled Mom come around the fence into our backyard. Entitled Kid ran to Entitled Mom, now full-on sobbing.
Mommy, I want the cake,
he cried. First, he wanted to cut it. Now he just wanted a slice? What was with this kid?
It's all right. You'll get cake,
Entitled Mom assured him. Now, while my mom was in the house, Entitled Mom set her sights on me.
Why are you being so rude to Entitled Kid? He's just trying to enjoy the party, and you rude teenagers are excluding him.
Entitled Mom, we have not been excluding him at all. My mom just doesn't want him to cut my cake. It's really not a big deal, I tried to explain. Bad choice of words.
Why shouldn't he be allowed to cut it? He's just trying to be helpful, and you're being very selfish.
Whoa, all right, lady. You're in my backyard, getting angry over something very stupid, and now yelling at a 16-year-old? I'm not being selfish. You're just creating a dramatic situation that was stupid to begin with. He's not going to cut it, and if you don't stop this right now, he's not even going to get a piece. At this point, my mom came out of the house holding several plates of cake slices. And may I add, there were only enough plates for me and my friends, not Entitled Kid. Entitled Mom looked absolutely furious at my words.
How dare you talk to me like that? You should be ashamed of yourself. Why don't I just take the whole cake, seeing as you're far too spoiled for it?
Entitled Mom was shouting now. Try to take my cake. Just try. The second you step foot in my house, I'm calling the cops. I snapped back at her.
You don't deserve that cake,
Entitled Mom yelled. An Entitled Kid does? It's not even his birthday.
I think the two of you should leave. You're being very rude to my daughter,
my mom said from the back in the low tone I knew all too well growing up. Entitled Mom looked at all the staring faces and must have known she was outnumbered. She nudged Entitled Kid out of the yard, not before suddenly sprinting to where the cake slices were placed and grabbing as many as she could hold. My mom was standing right there, so she clearly tried to stop her. Entitled Mom was shrieking, and my mom was screaming at her to get out. My friends and I were absolutely horrified.
Get out! Get out now! Or so help me, I will make sure you will rot in prison,
my mom yelled. This must have scared her because the next thing I saw was entitled Mom making a beeline to leave our yard. The good news was entitled Mom didn't manage to get away with my cake. The bad news was most of the slices were now on the ground. My friends, bless them, all helped clean up the mess and made sure I got to enjoy one of the remaining slices. My mom got out new pieces for them, and we all enjoyed my cake. We laughed pretty hard about the situation for the rest of the party. The next day, while I was cleaning up, I saw entitled Mom in her yard. She tried calling my name several times, but I just ignored her. I mean, after an idiotic stunt like that, could you blame me? This was a few days ago, and now I avoid any and all confrontation with my neighbors. Like I said, they used to be very pleasant people, so it's a bit sad that they ruined it all by acting so entitled. Next we've got,
Why aren't you watching your baby cousins? I don't care that they aren't your kids. Be more responsible.
Hey Mr. Reddit, I decided to post a second story because I love you that much. Please enjoy the antics of my crazy entitled aunt. As she is my aunt and we are not estranged, I have hundreds of similar stories that I could share about her. I decided to pick out the most satisfying, the ones where her bull was called out. Unfortunately, most of my interactions with her didn't end so well, especially when I was younger. So, a little backstory. I come from a large family on my father's side. He had 6 siblings, 5 of which were sisters. As a middle child and the only son to have children, my aunts kind of saw me and my sister as the property of all the family. We grew up as the only cousins who were routinely disciplined by every aunt. There's a ton of emotional baggage there, but that's not really what this story is about. Long story short, my sister and I do not have a good relationship with our aunts, especially me. I tended to be the black sheep of my family. I was a shy, socially awkward tomboy who was a bit of a mommy's girl. I also was a huge crybaby when I was little, which didn't help me winning over any of my very strict aunts. By the time these stories start, I am no longer a kid. Although with how my aunts treat me, you may think otherwise. I am 18 and in my first year of college by this point. I had just reached the age where I started to stand up for myself more. Although, admittedly, my aunts still terrified me. I would just freeze up and not know what to say when they started yelling, no matter how unjust the accusation. Enter entitled aunt. She is my oldest aunt, second only to my uncle. I think this is part of the reason why she struts around my grandma's house like a mother hen. She's single, never married, but was a first-grade teacher for several decades. At this point, she was retired, free to rule over my grandparents until they passed away. Although it may already be obvious, me and this aunt never really got along. There was only one aunt that I fought with more, but as I mentioned before, those are more painful and not really good stories to share. This aunt of mine was a brazen idiot. I had known that about her since I was a kid. While I was still scared of her, the fear was a little less with the knowledge of how stupid she was. She did not like me. I'm actually not sure why, as I was probably everything she claimed to adore in students. I was studious, hardworking, loved to read, and desperate to please. However, she decided to hate me from a young age. If anything would go wrong, it was always my fault. If the cousins broke something, it was my fault. If we played music too loud, my fault. Played video games too long, my fault. If we all decided to jump in the pool right after entitled aunt told us not to, you get the idea. She took the stance that the oldest needed to take responsibility for all the other kids. I was not the oldest cousin, but I was the oldest female cousin, so that's the only thing I can think of as to why I was often singled out. So, back to the story. My grandparents had a house in Florida that we'd often have big family get-togethers at. At this point in my life, even my cousins had kids. The kids in this story happened to be my youngest cousin and my second cousin's kid, respectfully. We will call them boy cousin and girl cousin. We've got entitled aunt, and we've got me. I was sitting in the living room watching TV when boy cousin and girl cousin decided to play chase through the house. The house layout kinda goes in a giant circle, so it's pretty easy to run a track around the place. I know I used to. They are both about 2 to 3 years old and little terrors in their own right. I would babysit girl cousin from time to time. That's going to be important. But at this point, as their parents were somewhere in the house, I didn't give a hoot what they did. I did call out at one point, "Hey, slow down, you're gonna get hurt." But admittedly, I didn't take my eyes off the TV. As I said before, not my kids. Parents in the other room did not care. Few seconds later, crash, bam, cue wailing kids. I warned them. I kinda chuckled to myself, but since they wrecked in the other room where all the aunts were stationed, I figured there was no reason to be concerned with what happened. It sounded like they had just run smack into each other, which turns out to be exactly what they did. Not more than 5 seconds later, in stomps entitled aunt, dragging my sobbing cousin behind her. Oh, I should also mention that my cousin is the entitled aunt's godchild, and according to my aunt, can do nothing wrong. That will come up as well. Entitled aunt stands in front of the TV, blocking my view.
Well?
Tapping her foot. I look between her and my sobbing cousin, who is sporting a lovely lump on her head.
You want to apologize to entitled cousin?
For what?
For what? For not watching her.
Excuse me?
Excuse you? Excuse me? You were supposed to be watching your cousin. You are the oldest. You're how old now? Why can't you be more responsible?
Isn't her mom in the other room?
Yes? So?
Shouldn't her mom be taking care of her?
You were right here, doing nothing. Why couldn't you take care of her?
Cousin at this point breaks from entitled aunt's arms and crawls up into my lap. She's still crying because her head hurts, but mostly I think she just wants to watch TV and take a nap. I give her a hug and go back to trying to watch TV through my screeching aunt, assuming she'll run out of batteries soon enough. Look, entitled aunt, her mom is in the other room. What did you want me to do? Throw myself in between them? Entitled aunt scoffs.
You saw them running around. You could have told them to stop.
I did.
You didn't try hard enough.
They were running right through the room all of you were in. Why didn't you stop them? At this point, my aunt's face screws up real ugly as she realizes she doesn't have a leg to stand on anymore. But not being one to ever apologize, she simply marches off, grumbling how she still held me responsible. As she walked off, I got a little jolt of bravery and shouted back at her, "I didn't realize I was on call duty for babysitting at all times. You guys really don't pay me enough." Technically, they didn't pay me at all. I don't know if my aunt heard me, and I don't care. And our final story of the day, entitled Stepmother Hijacks My Birthday Again. Short time lurker, first time posting, but I've been listening to a lot of r/s, especially you, r/Mr. Reddit, on YouTube, and I thought that I'd make a post of my own. English is my first language, so please let me know if something's spelled wrong. This story's not that long, but I hope you enjoy it anyway. Some background for context. This story happened in 2016, right after I graduated high school, but before I started college. I had a similar situation happen the year before with the same person, but that's a story for another time. Unfortunately for me, the entitled parent in this story is my stepmother. She's an entitled person in general, but especially so when it comes to her kids and herself, especially herself. But this time, the story's about her, not my step-siblings, who are all actually really chill. Cast, we've got me. We've got my dad, I'll call him Pops for some flair, my little brother, Mikey, and my stepmother, Jenny. So I live pretty far away from my dad, about 11 states, give or take, which means I don't get to see him that often. My little brother and I would go to stay with him every summer since he and our mom split. We'd get to see our older sister and brother too, but they weren't there for this. My sister had moved out at this point, and my older brother had moved in with our mom because of issues between him, Jenny, and Pops, and he hasn't seen them since. Mikey and I went to stay with him over the summer, like usual, and we were having fun. We'd go to the neighborhood pool with our stepsister, play with our stepnephew, binge anime with our stepsister and her friend, play board games with everyone, go out to see movies, all that fun stuff. Lucky for me, my birthday is in the middle of the summer, so I got to spend it with Pops. I never wanted anything big for my birthday, just to spend it with my family and have fun. Cheesy, I know, but I've always been like that. So this year, I asked Pops if we could go to the museum, and he agreed. I was so excited. I love museums, and I've only been to one other before. I don't remember the exact date we went, just that it was before my actual birthday. But Mikey, Pops, Jenny, and I all piled into the car and left. The drive was fun. We played a game guessing the name and artist of a song that was playing on the radio. Whoever got it first would get 2 points. It took a little while to get there. Pops lived pretty far north in the state, and the museum we were going to was near the state capital. But I was still just as excited about it, regardless of the lengthy drive. The museum we went to wasn't that big, as there were only 3 sections, and it was definitely cheap, but I didn't mind. I don't remember for sure what the first section was about. State history, maybe. But I remember the second was about rocks, my favorite, and the third was about technology, specifically transportation and rockets throughout the years. So, the 4 of us were exploring the rocks section. I was taking my time looking at all the rocks, and I hear Pops on the phone. I think it was a coworker, because Pops was talking about work stuff. I checked out of the conversation and walked away to check out some petrified wood. I only remember it was this because it was as big as me. After a minute or so of looking at it, I went to find Pops so I could show him the petrified wood. He was with Jenny, still on the phone when I spotted him, but he's not talking about work things anymore. He's talking about where he is. I hear the tail end of him saying that he took his daughter, for sure, me, to the museum for her birthday, and I decided to wait for him to hang up before grabbing him. Jenny seems to have the same idea, but no patience for it, because she grabs his arm and pulls him towards another exhibit while saying that it's for her birthday too. Now, I'm used to sharing my birthday. I've shared celebrations with my cousin and uncle for as long as I can remember. Our birthdays are only a few days apart, so we'd do one big party for all of us. I had to share it with my little brother a few years prior to this, even though his birthday's in November, because my parents spoiled him, and I couldn't do or get anything without him getting it too, because it wouldn't be fair. I can say that none of my birthdays have been 100% about me, and that was fine. I was used to it. But this was different. Jenny was an adult. She was making my birthday, the last one I would spend with my dad for a while, about her. Sadly, I expected it at this point. She always had to be the center of attention, and I didn't feel like being yelled at for being selfish, so I just walked away to enjoy what I could with Mikey while she went out of her way to keep Pop's attention. After a while, Pops decided it was time to leave. As we were heading out, I decided that I wanted to go to the gift shop and see what they had, so we stopped there. I was once again looking at the rocks, and I asked Pops if I could get one of the tiger eye jaspers. It was no more than $5, but he said no. I shrugged, disappointed but unsurprised. Pops is pretty cheap, and turned to leave. Jenny walked up holding something. I don't remember what it was, just that it was expensive, and asked Pops if he would get it. Pops hesitated, but when Jenny reminded him it was her birthday present, he agreed. I didn't say anything. I like to avoid confrontation, and I knew this would be a waste of breath, but I did roll my eyes and walk with Mikey to the exit as they paid. And that's it. Not a very satisfying ending, but I know how Jenny can be. On a good day, she's a jerk. And I didn't want her taking out her anger on me or my brother, who she would target way more often. And honestly, that's one of the milder things she's done, and I was used to it at this point. I have a few other stories with her, and my older brother definitely has some too. If anyone wants to hear about those, she's always aggressively targeted my siblings more than me. I also have plenty of stories about my relatives, many of whom are entitled or just jerks in general. So, let me know if you want more. Thanks for reading. That's all for now, but don't be blue. I'll be back soon with more stories for you. Remember to listen to Mr. Reddit every night so your dreams will be wonderful like you are and bright.